Ladies and gentlemen, it is a big day in the Project Nebula sphere. I am officially introducing my time dilation proposal for Planet Nebula. I want to start Planet Nebula on year 0, and we have a buying process before year 0, and then when the land gets bought up, of course, if you're buying 1 Nebula coin, you also get 1 mile of land on Nebula. We let the simulation go, and over the course of 5 or 6 years, not only do we see Nebula develop, but we actually see it move past the technology of Earth, and we see the planet become something greater than Earth has ever become, and this is all Web3. This is all the ecosystem. I cannot deal with Google and just searching it and the curated stuff. Of course, it's to be expected. Like, I should do a whole video on Google and how bad it is. Really, any of those, they say, oh, use other ones. They're all horrible. We need something that is totally new and not involved with the government when it comes to searching on the web. We need to be searching freely. That's Web3. Now, guys, we remember Interstellar, one of the greatest movies ever. The time dilation. You go on the Miller's planet, 1 hour equals 7 years on Earth. Project Nebula time difference. My theory, 1 Earth day equals 1 year on Nebula. It is so epic. It really is. So 1 day on Earth, 24 hours is 1 year. I've calculated everything. I think I've gotten it down to the minute, down to the hour. What does it all equal? I've got a graph that I'm going to go to towards the end of the video to talk about all the calculations, but I'm going to walk you guys through how I can explain this time difference would work to where, 24 hours is 1 year on Nebula, because we're going to have to speed Nebula up. We don't want people being bored. We want stuff happening on Nebula at all times, and I'm going to kind of talk about the whole VR experience, because I'm sure people are wondering, how is that even possible? The sun's going to rise and set so fast, the same exact time. It's going to be like a motion sickness because the time difference is so crazy, but I'm going to explain everything here. No real season. So this is number 1. No real seasons during the simulation because time moves too fast on Nebula. And what I mean by that, if you take a look at, let's just say Boston, Massachusetts, it has 4 seasons, right? So in the winter, it's snow on the ground. In the summer, it's 70, 80 degrees. We have to cut that out on Nebula. If it's beautiful year round. If it's, whatever, maybe it's snowing sometimes, maybe it's not. But the whole idea of having seasons, there can be seasons, but they would play out just like Earth. Like the time of them would be like Earth. What I'm saying is because the time difference is so crazy, 1 year on, or 1 Earth day equals 1 year on Nebula. Let's say you own a spot on Nebula and you could get snow in the morning, 80-degree weather at night. We're not going to have that variance. I don't want that. I think it's too volatile. I want a more stable thing to where it's going to basically mimic Earth time when it comes to the seasons, or we're just not going to have seasons. But I think we can do it to where we can have seasons if we program it properly. But it's something with the seasons and how they change, we really can't do, within minutes it's going to be 80 degrees, then it's going to be snowing, because it just moves too quickly. It's not possible. And these are my official calculations. You've got 8,760 hours on Nebula, which is the equivalent to 1 year. That equals 24 hours on Earth, right? Just like I said, 1 day on Earth, which is 24 hours, equals 1 year on Nebula, which is 8,760 overall hours. We take the bigger number, we divide it by the smaller number, 365 hours on Nebula every Earth hour. What does that equate to? 365 hours equals roughly 15.2 days on Nebula for every Earth hour. So it's about 15 days per hour looking at the calculation, and that's exactly why we can't do the sunrise sunset in Nebula time, because it doesn't work. So there will be a sunrise and sunset on Nebula. It's going to be based off of the Earth. It's not going to be tethered to the Nebula time, because again, if you put on your VR goggles on Nebula, due to the time difference and how fast it's moving, it's going to be sunrise, sunset, sunrise, sunset. You're going to get motion sickness from it and things like, it's too much. And even looking at the planet, like because I want you to be able to view it like Google Earth and you can see the spot in which you own, it would just be like the sun would be moving across, or, so quickly, it just does not make sense. So that's why the sunrise and sunset and the way the sun acts on nebula is going to be almost a carbon copy. Obviously, we're going to do things with the sun, like make it change colors and stuff like that. That's the fiction part of it. But in terms of the sunrise, sunset, it will not follow nebula time. Nebula time will work. It'll go extremely quickly. I have more calculations. But like in terms of 15 days for every hour on Earth. So let's say it's noon. You take a nap, it's 1 o'clock, 15 days passed on nebula. Maybe I'm just a nerd, but I just think that we never see stuff like that. It's amazing to see something like that, or even think about something like that on an imaginary planet. And then to check my work, what I did is I did 15.2 times 24, and the result I'm looking for is 365, and I got 364.8. So it's basically the same thing. These are all rough estimates, so that tells me that my work is correct on the calculations for how many days within 1 hour. It's almost 15.2 nebula days for every hour that passes on Earth. And then there it is. No real-time sunrises or sunsets. The time is simply too fast. It's the exact same thing with the overall season problems. We can have seasons, but that's going to be based off of Earth time. The seasons are more based off of Earth time, or we don't have seasons at all, or maybe we just do random stuff, but it cannot be based off a nebula. It's going to move too quickly. It is moving too fast. But this is the great thing about it being this quickly, and people will say that's over aggressive. You shouldn't have 1 day on Earth equal 1 year on nebula. It has to move quickly. We have to keep people that want to get into nebula, buy nebula, see their land develop. We have to keep them entertained. We know how it is nowadays. People want to watch stuff 7 seconds, 10 seconds. Everything has to be happening. Our attention spans are so short with the development of the internet, the development of some of these social media apps. That's why I want constant action on nebula, while it's also very peaceful. I want nebula to be a place that's better than Earth, that's more of a beautiful society, a beautiful blue color, just perfect. Everything about nebula I want just to be just better. I want it to be better, and I think we can make it better. And then this is just how I found out my next calculation. Right around 500K minutes in a year. 1,440 minutes in a day. You take the bigger, you divide it by a smaller, and that is 365 minutes on nebula, which equals 1 Earth minute. So for every time 60 seconds pass on Earth, 365 minutes on nebula, which calculates 365 minutes is roughly around 6 hours. So for every minute on Earth, 6 hours passes on nebula. I believe I got these calculations roughly correct. I am not a math scholar. I was actually really good at math in like elementary school. I'd be able to do it really quickly, and then algebra hit and I couldn't do it well. But I believe I've calculated this stuff correctly, and it is remarkable. The idea that, let's just take a random time, 3:33 to 3:34, 6 hours passes on nebula. And of course, the sunrise and sunset it's not gonna be 6 hours, because again, it just moves too quickly. It'll follow Earth time overall. Just one standard sunrise and sunset, and it's just basically gonna follow the universal standard time on Earth. So it'll just go across the Earth. The sun will just move across the Earth. You could open up anything, like any widget that has the Earth right now and where the sun is located. That's kind of the exact carbon copy model we're looking for. I'm sure there'll be some tweaks that we might be able to do because it's fiction and it's fun and we want to have fun. There's certain things you can do, but the general sense of it, the skull and bones to it, is it's going to roughly follow the same thing, to where, for example, let's say you own a 5-mile stretch of nebula on the west. It'll be roughly like your sunrise sunset time will be roughly the same as someplace in the United States, because the United States is located on the west. So just kind of an example there on how that's going to work out. Very similar. I believe we have the tech to accomplish a simulation like this. Yes, so this is going to be a very hard thing to do, but I think you look at some of the open world games, the engines like GTA back in 2013, I think we have the technology to do it. Perform a quote-unquote maintenance check on NeBula once or twice a year to load new simulation info. So yeah, I'm really not sure how all of this will work when it comes to the simulation playing out. I would imagine they've already written code that is similar to my idea of a simulation, like a planet just running for years and years and years and developing and things like that. But I do think there could be a time, like once a year, we might have to tell people NeBula is down for 4 hours because we have to actually go into the planet and program the next simulation once a year or twice a year. This is just all my speculation. I really don't know how this works. But in terms of the simulation, a lot of the legwork is going to be done by developers and things like that, actually developing and making sure the planet runs smoothly and operates smoothly. That's one of the big concerns, is that it won't lag and things like that. That's such an issue. But I think with the technology we have now, hopefully we can take advantage of it, especially through Web3 and stuff, and really level up the internet experience. And something like NeBula, it's going to be very hard to get this to work 100% properly. It's going to be a lot of trial and error, but I do think with the technology we have now, a simulation of over 1,000 years, 2,000 years, it can all be done with the right technology. The time difference is not set in stone, but I want to put an emphasis on making the time difference easy to understand. So that's why I picked 1 day on Earth equals 1 year on NeBula, because I want it to be easy for people. It's just the exact same reason I said, if you're buying 1 NeBula coin, you also get 1 mile. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. 1 day on Earth, 1 year on NeBula. I mean, technically it's 365 days versus 1 day, but it's the same idea, right? It's easy for people to understand. I want, the idea of, 1 day on Earth equals 47.623 days on NeBula. It just doesn't compute as well into the brain of your average person who's trying to understand this project and how cool it is. So I think rounding it and making it real easy for people, 1 day equals 1 year. How crazy is that? You're going to watch your land develop very quickly, over the span of a month. You're going to see 30 years go by. So that is the whole idea of it. Everything develops really quickly. When you're buying land on NeBula, you're going to see rapid change immediately, which I think is something that I really emphasize it because the way our brains work now, our attention spans are so short, things like that. So I do emphasize that. And then this is just, again, I did this in the last video. So I would like to start the simulation on year 0. And then I'm just going through the chapters. So now that we know, 1 day on Earth is 1 year on NeBula, 365 days on Earth is 365 years on NeBula, you can see it lines up, right? Year 0 to 365 is the equivalent of 1 year, because 1 year on NeBula is 1 day on Earth. And those are just kind of the chapters. You do no real civilization the entire first year, because we do want an organic experience watching the land develop. You got cavemen coming in, or obviously, I don't know if we're going to have people. You really can't have people on NeBula because they would be moving too quickly because of the time dilation, which it does sound amazing. It just sounds epic that there's the time difference and stuff. It's just because we're not used to that. We're not used to that at all. And then you can see modern life, chapter 3. These are just rough estimates on the years, and they do not align with our current years. Now, you may be wondering, why wouldn't I just have it align with our current years and say, we get modern technology in 1999 or 2005 or 2007? So though, if you actually study human history, we were stagnant for a very long time in our history. So that presents a problem with something like this. If I were to mirror human innovation on a planet, about 99% of it would be really boring because we were stagnant until we got the internet and everything. So that's why I'm trying to push it up a little bit to keep it interesting, right? Because really, so much of our innovation has happened in the past 20 or 30 years, and I'm not even bad-mouthing older people or people from 1700 or 1800. That's all part of the evolution. 100 years from now, people are going to look at videos like this or whatever YouTube videos and say those people are dumb, they don't have technology. That's just how we evolve, and we have to accept that. So, I was just kind of thinking about, do I make it the same to where 2007, 2008, we all get our phones and stuff like that, and that's how Earth develops? I don't think that can really work, because it would just end up being really boring for the first 95% of it, because we were very stagnant early on in our civilization. And then chapter 5, that's a possible type 1 civilization. The idea is, if Nebula is big enough, we add a moon, we add another planet, we do things like that. Type 2, now we're terraforming multiple planets. That's what type 2 civilizations do, and it gets really crazy because we can make as many planets as possible. We can make crazy things. I want a full water planet in 7 or 8 years, possibly, to where you might be buying water, or maybe make a full water planet with only islands and no real connectable land. It's only islands, and you buy islands. You get one island. That's what you do. You want to buy land on a water planet, which is 98% water, but it's even bigger than Nebula, and it's 2% land, and it's just all little small islands that pop up, and you can own one of the islands, and they all develop differently. Think about that for a second. That would be very, very, very interesting. And then when it comes to the actual little graph that I made to try and make it even easier, you can see the Earth Nebula time difference there. 1 day equals 1 year. 1 hour on Earth equals roughly 15.2 days on Nebula. And then 1 minute or 60 seconds on Earth is around 6 hours, a little over 6 hours total on Nebula. This was just to kind of make it easier, make a little thumbnail, and show it in the most simplest way possible. That's why I wanted to make this graph. So I'll leave that up for a second so everyone can just see. Well, actually, it's not a hard concept or anything like that. I just think it's really cool. I really do think it's cool. And this whole project, and again, I look at what's going on with Google and with it's just all so corrupt. Guys, if there's a single word I could describe what's going on with Web 2 and the curation of information, it is all so corrupt. It is all controlled by the government. This is not me being a conspiracy theorist, but guys, you reach a point in life, and 3 or 4 years ago, I would look at this thought process and say it's ridiculous. But now it's you start to realize they will obviously control the information that you read, because they don't want bad information coming out about whatever. They want to control every narrative. That's the scariest thing with the internet. If somebody controls what information you see, you will develop a narrative based off of what they're telling you. So that is the most scary thing, and we're developing so much, and people are trying to branch out onto Web3, and it's we need something. We need a funding source. We need a community base. That's what Nebula is. Nebula is a community base. It is the epicenter for Web3, in my opinion. That's why I really want it to succeed, and it is a huge project. It's the biggest project, I would say, digitally with technology in our history, and it could possibly lead to a ton of change for sure. But guys, that's going to do it for this video.